Well, it is such a joy for me to give this update today. Marlon Frank from our World Community Service Committee called me last week, and he expressed the committee's desire to find a contact that they could partner with and provide support for the ongoing Ukraine war relief effort. And so I sent the committee some information about a wonderful organization in Hungary that's doing just that. And in true Rotarian fashion, they met, they reviewed, and they immediately started meeting needs. And so I get to talk about this wonderful organization that is dear to my heart and my wife's heart as well as talk to you guys about how your donation has already provided support to many Ukrainians that have been most affected by the war. Let me click through here. So when my wife and I were teaching in Hungary, we also partnered with an organization called YWAM Budapest. And YWAM Budapest stands for Youth with a Mission. They are a service organization that invites students from all over the world to come and live and serve in Hungary. And they've been doing some amazing things in Eastern Europe since they were founded in the early 90s, right after the fall of the Berlin Wall. My wife and I actually started traveling over to Hungary with them in 2006 before we moved there full time in 2009. The founders and base leaders in Hungary at the YWAM base are Steve and Barbara Johnson, and they are close family friends of ours. Steve worked for Boeing in the early 80s before moving to Budapest, establishing this base. And since then, he has been there with his family and staff, meeting needs not only in Hungary, but other Eastern European countries as well. If you watch the news, you may know a little bit about the Hungarian government, but the Hungarian government has an awful humanitarian track record. In fact, under their current Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, they have systematically dismantled their asylum and refugee systems for the past 7 years. And so, okay.
Keep going, she'll get it.
All right. They have an awful track record, and so they've dismantled the refugee and asylum systems. And so the majority of aid that's coming out of Hungary right now is shouldered upon volunteer and charity organizations like YWAM, and of course, the amazing Hungarian people. And so YWAM, since the war in Ukraine began, YWAM has pivoted all of their resources to try to offer as much aid as possible. And they're doing it in two major ways. The first is that they're making food and supply runs into Ukraine. And the second is that they're providing temporary housing and assistance to refugees coming from Ukraine. And I just want to show you a couple pictures and go through those quickly with you. So every Saturday at 3:30 a.m., Steve and his team load up a cargo van full of supplies. They depart Hungary for a 9-hour one-way trip into Ternopil, Ukraine. And you can imagine, for safety reasons, they make this 18-hour round trip in one day. The most requested items are non-perishable foods, baby formula, clothes, and medical supplies. This is a picture of the YWAM team loading up the van the Friday before they leave on Saturday mornings at their base there in Hungary. This is Steve Johnson. He's on the left in the Texas A&M shirt with the staff member Vane Arsov heading into Ukraine. These are from last weekend. Vane is Macedonian. We got to know him very well while we were living in Hungary. The best way that I can describe him is that he is the Macedonian version of Fred Brown. He has a huge heart, a great personality, and is a guy that gets stuff done. He is. So he is exactly who you want on a ride into a war-torn country, right? You could imagine that. But they traveled together this last weekend into Ukraine. On the way there, they go through several different checkpoints. Checkpoints are manned with armed guards, some not wearing proper, I'm going to read that. Proper uniforms leading us to wonder if they were normal citizens who have just been conscripted into the Army to help out. Along with checkpoints, there are also different makeshift lookout points that are stationed all around the route that they pass by quite frequently. Once they arrive in Ternopil, most of the supplies stay there to assist a temporary shelter. The other supplies get loaded into smaller vehicles by locals and then driven further into Ukraine to some of the more war-torn areas. This is a picture of the upstairs of the temporary shelter in Ternopil. It serves over 1,000 refugees a day who have fled from the most dangerous areas. I can't read the rest of that, but basically they have a whole system set up there so refugees arriving at the train station can give them a call. There are 22 other shelters in that city that they connect with, but the supplies that we help supply are there right now, and there's another trip going out this weekend. So you can imagine this Saturday when you get up, there is a cargo van with supplies that this club helped purchase, all ready on its way into Ukraine to be delivered, and that's pretty cool. The second way that they've been helping out with a relief effort is they've been providing temporary housing and assistance to refugees. This is a graphic of the 31 border checkpoints into Eastern Europe. Those checkpoints are changing all of the time, depending on what's happening on the ground in Ukraine and what's happening politically in the countries that border Ukraine. As of April 1st, this is the refugee count coming out of Eastern Europe. You can see Hungary is about 400,000. I talked to Steve last night. He thinks that that number is probably closer to 500,000. This is Steve and Barbara Johnson. They're making an IKEA run here to purchase mattresses and bedding and many other things needed to make their hospitality apartments ready. If you're a refugee having to leave your home, you're not taking much with you. So they keep this whole room stocked with different things that refugees, families, kids can take and use. These are a couple of pictures that we're allowed to show of some of the families that came through here. On the left here, you see a little boy. His name is Jonathan. Him and his wife, or his mother, excuse me, is a single mother who came in from Ukraine, got into Budapest, not knowing exactly how, showed up at the train station and was crying, did not speak much English, did not speak any Hungarian, until they saw YWAM staffers holding signs written in Ukraine saying, "We're here to help." On the right, there's a family of 5 that stayed at the YWAM house there, grandfather, grandmother, dad, mom, and a little boy. This is an update from Vane's wife, Adita, and I'm going to read what I can here. It says, "This last week has been a very intense week for us. Every day we receive phone calls asking for help. Some need transportation from the Ukraine-Hungarian borders. Others need accommodation. Everyone on our YWAM team is involved in some way, from preparing food and toiletries, baking cakes and cookies, preparing transportation, coordinating housing arrangements, etc., to provide assistance for those fleeing Ukraine. It's been a joy for them to help, but also really saddening." These pictures are actually from today's lunch in Budapest. One of the things that they do at their YWAM base down in the basement is they coordinate a lunch for all of the Ukrainian refugees that can come, a free lunch that they can connect, they can get support from one another, and they can also just have a chance to tell their experiences and kind of work through the trauma of what they're going through. Along with Ukrainian nationals, YWAM is also helping some foreign nationals that got caught up in the country when the war began. Along with Ukrainian nationals, YWAM has been supporting many foreigners trying to leave the country. In March, Steve and Balint drove to the Ukrainian border to pick up 7 Nigerian medical students studying in Kyiv. Foreigners, especially Africans, are suffering racial tensions, and leaving Ukraine is becoming more and more difficult. After 2 days with us in Budapest, they were able to get onto an evacuation flight back to Nigeria, which was set up by the Nigerian embassy there in Hungary. Steve wrote, "I'm sure their mothers are happy to have them home." Could you imagine that? Not only being caught in in Ukraine when this was going on, but also being a family member outside of it, wondering what's happening. So far, the average stay of a refugee with YWAM is 2 to 3 days before they eventually start moving west. YWAM is currently hosting about 15 to 20 refugees at any given time. They're expecting a greater influx as the war continues and Western European nations reach capacity. Last night, Steve and Barbara Johnson had dinner with a Ukrainian family that is staying in one of their refugee apartments, and they made this video to share with you today.
Hi, we're Steve and Barbara Johnson, and we serve in Budapest, Hungary with the mission. And we've been helping to serve our Ukrainian brothers and sisters and all who need help during this crisis. Some of the ways we've been doing that is sending supplies into Ukraine, medical supplies, baby food, diapers, and we've also been able to house some of the refugees and some who have been displaced coming into Budapest. And so I just want to introduce you to some dear friends and a family, Valentina and her two children, Barbara and Dennis, and they just want to give a chance for them to introduce themselves and share who they are.
Hello, I'm Barbara. I'm Ukrainian. My name is called Varvara. This is my older brother, big brother Dennis, and this is my mom, Valentina. We are from South Ukraine, from a little city called Mykolaiv, which is now heavily attacked, unfortunately, and it's basically Texas, which is already taken over, and Odessa, which is still not closed, thank God. We came here to Hungary in March, beginning of March, 1 week after the war started. The war met me in a hospital bed with a head injury and bullet in my face. My war started in the morning in the hospital with words, "Good morning, the war has started." What a horrible feeling to hear that while you're laid with head injury in a bed in a hospital with other people with head injuries and medical injuries, and not being able to move. Through thousands and billions of miracles from God and all these people who very often do not know each other, we ended up here in Hungary. And God was sending us help from all the sides with things we would never be able to get ourselves and to reach out to people. I personally never knew anything about Hungary, shame on me, and never been to Hungary even though I traveled the world. And I've been doing business, and I'm educated as a surgical nurse, and I've been doing business the last 9 years in Ukraine. I travel quite a lot. I know many languages. I've seen the world, but I know nothing about Hungary till now. So God worked a lot in our lives. He saved our lives. He helped us a lot. I got medical help. I got emotional support from all these loving Christian people around. And we also got shelter with our family here in this apartment. And this is a huge blessing because right now there is this housing crisis in their countries surrounding Ukraine because of so many Ukrainians coming. That is, even those people who have money, which most of them don't, they cannot rent any place because people don't want to have Ukrainians because it's not enough space and everything. So we are so glad and happy. And in addition, we have so wonderful to stay here with so wonderful mission people who we have fellowship with Christians who make our hearts much lighter of our burden and pain than it was before we met them. We're so happy. And thank you for being a part of it and being in distance, helping us personally and my people, my friends. Thank you so much. God bless you so much. Дякуємо. Слава Україні.
Man, your donation matters. It may be a small piece in the ongoing relief effort that needs to take place over years, but man, it matters. It matters to these people. It matters to families like this. It matters to children like Jonathan. It's a big deal. The essential supplies that this contribution, this club made, provide tangible care and loving provision to those who have left home under frightening and tragic circumstances. I called Steve Johnson last week on the phone and told him about the donation of this club, and he was in tears. He gets a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails from people who want to help, but not many people do. You guys did. It's a big deal. He was blown away by the fact that not only would you make a contribution, that you'd be interested also in learning about what he's doing in Hungary. So I just want to say thank you, Rotarians. This is an organization that is dear to my heart. Steve was there when my oldest son was born. It matters, it means a lot. So thank you. Thank you to the World Community Service Committee, to Ted, to Matt, to Marlon, to everyone on that, to Chris Woodruff for making this happen. It's huge. If you are interested in learning any more information about Steve and Barbara Johnson, what YWAM is doing, if you would like their contact information, if you would like to support a supply run into Ukraine or adopt a refugee family by sending just a little money, please come find me. I know that there are a lot of organizations out there, and I can't think of a better one to give to. Thanks, Linda.